Hey everybody, Lawrence here with 30 Basic Terrain, coming at you with another one. Now, most of you have probably seen my rock golem video. I'll put a link down in the description that I just recently did. And I actually had a lot of fun making that. So I was thinking, well, there are other golems I can make. So I was like, well, why not make a crystal golem? So I wound up making two. But I just want to walk you through the process. Very similar to the rock golem, but a few different changes. But I want to walk you through the process of how to make these golems. But before we get to it, guys, I want to say a big thank you to my patrons, Dungeon Matron, Corel, and Mia Geek. You guys' help is greatly appreciated. It makes doing videos a lot. It just makes it easier mentally. But I can't say thank you enough. So let's get to it. Okay, to start off, I'm going to grab a pack of bases I have and a handful of offcuts and scraps from the scrap bin. Pretty simple. Same as when I made the rock golem, I want to start from the feet and work my way up. So right now I'm just trimming down a chunk of offcut just to get a really rough size of a foot. And then I'll start trimming it down to basically get a really, really rough foot shape. And once I get to there, I'm just going to start picking. I like this method because it gives it a really rough, more natural rock-like feel to it. It just looks like not refined in any way, shape, or form, which is the look I'm going for. So just pick till I get a rough shape of what I want. I'm going to use a file to carve out some toes and then kind of widen the lines for the toes, and then I'm going to use a foil ball to give a little extra texturing and to basically smooth out some of the where I picked. This is a pretty simple process. It takes a little time, but you got a foot. Now now that I've got my feet done, I actually want to get the shins. And this is, you got to be a little bit not as free as what the feet were, because you got to kind of match it to the feet or the ankles of the feet or whatever. But I'm just picking away till I get a rough shape of what I want the shins to be. Again, this is simple. No expensive tools needed. Get it matched up, hot glue it in place, and boom, you got your shins. At least one. And now I've got the shins, I'm going to get the thighs done. It's the same as the shins, getting a rough idea of matching it up to the top of the shins or where the knees would be. But just rough, and then just start picking away. I said this is not an overly complicated process to do. It's pretty simple. It may be a little bit time consuming, but it's not that hard to do. You do want to make sure you don't pick away too much, because then it'll look kind of wonky when you try and match them up. Just get a rough idea of trying to match it up to the piece before it. Now, of course, let's get the torso, or basically the abdomen, chest, and the shoulders done. I got a relatively large chunk of foam, and this is going to require a lot more trimming than the feet or the legs did, but it's the same basic concept. Just shave away till you get a rough shape of what you want. And, keep checking to where the legs are. so you get a good idea of basic rough feel of what you have to shave away yet. Again, as always, it's just better to shave small parts away and large chunks, because if you do a large chunk, you may risk the chance of cutting away too much, and that could be a problem. But once you get a rough idea, you can just start picking away, and if you have to pick away at the legs like I'm doing here, you can do that. Again, I like pick. Again, this is just a quick and simple and easy way. You can use a tool to do this. I just choose not to, because, well, no real reason. This is how I wanted to do it. You can use a small metal pick or whatever, but since I didn't bite my fingernail today, I actually decided to do it this way. But again, just keep going until you're happy with how it looks. And occasionally, test fit it to the piece, and then once you do that, you can hot glue it in place. And of course, here I am getting ready to start working on the arms. I'm going to do the arms the same way I did the legs, except in the opposite direction. In this part, I'm just working on the upper half of the arm. And shaving away, test fitting, just till I'm generally happy with how it looks. And I'm going to cut it where the elbow would be at an angle, so the arms, I can stick the arms in any direction I want. Once I'm happy with the rough idea of trimming, I just do the pick method. It's simple and easy. Now I got to do the forearms, and they're going to be cut exactly like the upper half of the arms. Just basically, I want to match the flat parts as much as I possibly can, just so there's not like a big difference between one and the other. And once I get to that rough eye shape idea, I just do the pick, and get the texture that I want and I'm happy with. And once I get to a point that I like, I'll hot glue it together. And now it's time to do the hands. Or I'm going to make fist. I'm making fists instead of hands because the fist is easier to carve out to begin with. I just have to carve a roughly ball shape to match the end of the forearm. And it's more durable in the end. A hand with the thin fingers could easily break in the end. So when doing one like this, it's a safe bet. It's safer for the life of the model or terrain piece to do a fist. But again, I've carved it out and I picked it, and now I'm carving in the fingers in the fist shape. I'm using the file, but you can use an X-Acto blade or something, and I'm using this fondant tool to widen the gaps in between the fingers just to make them more defined. And once I'm happy with how it looks, I'll just hot glue it in place. Now it's time to make a head. If you can see, I've already done one head, and I made it an elongated shape. For these, I didn't want to go for a standard like round shaped head. I wanted them to be a little different because that way it'd also give me room for some extra crystals later on that you'll see. But I'm just basically I rough cut it to the shape I want, and again, I'm just picking it to get the same texture as the rest of the monster. just so I can remain consistent throughout the build. Once I get to the rough shape I want, I might, I was like, oh, that's a little too rough, so I sand it a little bit. Yeah, that looks about right. And I'm going to carve out some eyes and a mouth. Does a crystal golem really need an eyes and a mouth? No, but, it looks cool. And again, see, I'm actually using an X-Acto blade, so you can use pretty much whatever you want to get these lines carved into the tools. I'm using all 3 tools here to make the face. But once you're happy with that, happy how it turns out, a dab of hot glue, boom, you got a head. Well, this is a crystal golem, so I need to make some crystals. I'm cutting some XPS down to shape. Basically, right now I'm cutting elongated squares. And I'm going to be doing various sizes, some larger, some smaller, just so I have a variety of size of crystals. But right now, I just want to cut basically elongated squares for future use. And again, like I said, I'm doing various sizes, like a large, medium, and small. Though in the end, I only use the medium and the small ones, but I save the large ones for down the road. I put them in like my extra bins. Now here I'm using an angle cutter set at 45 degrees on my Proxxon, and I'm just carving off the corners of all the square, or the square parts, to give it more of a classic crystal shape to it. You can absolutely do this with a blade if you want, if you don't have a hot wire cutter, but the hot wire cutter makes for quick work. Now that I've got all my classic crystal shapes carved, I need to put some points on this, and this is absolutely done with a blade. It's just quick, and I basically carve points until I'm happy, and then cut them to the length that I want. And if you notice, I'm actually carving points on either end, just so I can get 2 crystals cut at one shot without having to hold shorter pieces for convenience. Of course, here I'm doing the same thing with the tiny crystals. This is a quick and easy process. You can make the points as short or as long as you want, depending on the angle that you cut with your blade. And before I did actually start doing these cuts, I did switch in for a fresh blade because I wanted a sharp one. Now here I got to figure out where exactly I want all these crystals to go. And these medium-sized crystals actually wound up being too big. So I just went down each flat side and carved a chunk off until they were the right size. See, it's okay if you make it a little too big. You can always cut it down to make it smaller. So quick, easy, kind of happy with how it looks. Dab of hot glue, boom, done. And unfortunately, being that I'm going to use several of these medium-sized crystals, I got to do that with each one because they were just too honking big for what I wanted. So, but, it's not that big a deal. I still had a fresh blade in my knife, so I just shave them down to the right size, cut them at an angle I want, and then hot glue them in place real quick and easy. Now that I've got all the larger size crystals on that I want on, I'm going to just start placing wherever I want the smaller size crystals. This one, I'm going to give them a mohawk of crystals because it looks cool. Again, now, I know how my players will treat this particular model, and the overall life of this miniature, yeah, miniature, is going to be. So I'm not super reinforcing these smaller crystals, but if you've got rough players or whatnot, a way to really reinforce them is to take like a piece of a toothpick and then jam it up into the middle of it and then into where you're going to place it. That'll add a lot of strength to these XPS crystals because they are small and they are rather fragile. Now that I got all my crystals on, I want to put some sand on the base. I'm just gluing on some PVA real quick, or brushing on some PVA quick, and then I'm going to dump my construction sand in. I use construction sand and not play sand because it's got like bigger chunks of aggregate, not just like fine sand. It's got small pieces of stone mixed in with it, just so it'll give it some variety over, like, say, play sand. But as you can see, I actually glued some of the crystals to the base too, just to give a little extra visual interest, rather just, hey, here's some dirt, but tap it off, get a little few spots that were a little shallow, and yeah, that's it. Okay, while I'm waiting for the glue on the sand to dry, I want to hide all these seams. Just like I did with the rock golems, I'm using my homemade texture paste. I'll put a link in the description how to make it. Just to basically brush over the seams. And once it's dry and painted, you will not be able to see the seams at all. So it's an easy process. Like I said, it's homemade texture paste, homemade, so it's relatively cheap, and it will cover up anything that you can use it to cover up holes, seams, whatever. And also you can use it as a standard texture paste. Go figure. Here, I've already black Mod Podged the golems because those small crystals, they need a little extra something. But I'm not technically giving, even though it works out to be like a zenithal highlight, I'm not going for a zenithal highlight with this. Because the craft paint is going to cover that up anyway. So, it's kind of like, eh. But my main goal here is I want all the crystals to be painted on a white base coat. So I'm just using my airbrush and some white primer, and it'll get done exactly what I want. Because if you paint over a dark base, it'll have just a slightly darker tone. And at the moment, I'm thinking I want to paint over white because the white will give you a slightly brighter look to it. Now here I'm just going over the sand to make it look like dirt. I'm going to be using a dark brown because it's dirt, it's earth color. So I'm just trying to get as much of 100% coverage in all the sand with this dark brown, just as a base coat for the dirt areas. And now for all the dirt areas, I'm giving a mid-tone brown overbrush, not 100% coverage, more like 80% roughly, leaving all like the darkest crevices just to show the dark brown underneath. But this is just a quick overbrush for my mid-tone. And for our final highlight on the dirt areas, I'm giving a real quick light dry brush with a light brown, or I'm using light mocha. But basically, using the triad system, dark, medium, light. That's all you really have to do. And here, all the earth eater stone area of the golems themselves, I'm using a mixture of a dark gray and a 50-50 mix of a dark brown and a dark gray. This is going to be my base for all the areas that's not crystal. And here I'm using a mid-tone color of a mixture of a mid-tone brown and a mid-tone gray. Same as the step before, but mid-tones. And I'm giving an overbrush of all the non-crystal areas. Now, I could have gone with the same colors as the base, but then the base and the mini itself would just blend into one piece. And one of the reasons I'm using the mixture colors, just so there's a definite difference between the base itself and the mini. But again, I'm doing an overbrush here, and it's going for like an 80% coverage, leaving the darkest cracks and recesses alone. And now I'm using a mixture of my light brown and light gray. And I'm doing a quick dry brush over all the non-crystal areas just to bring up all the edge highlights and just make it pop, all the edges and textures pop. That's the real purpose of doing all the dry brushing, just to make it pop more. Now for these crystals, I obviously went with a purple and blue. I'm just going to show you the blue paint job, but all the crystals are getting a base coat of this, I don't even remember. I think it's a navy blue or royal blue or something. I don't know, but chances are you will have to give, if you're doing craft paints like I am with this, there is a good chance you're going to have to give it a second coat once it dries, because there will be streaking, more than likely. And that did happen to me, and I did eventually once this dried out, I did have to give it a second coat of blue. But not that big a deal. Though I will say this, I really should have painted these before I glued them on. Honestly, it would have made it easier to paint the crystals. But, live and learn. Now here I'm using a lighter shade of blue than the base coat, and I'm running a wide stripe along the edges or the corners of all the where the crystals are, including the tops and stuff, just to give it so it looks like it's starting to lighten up towards all the cuts and corners of each crystal. Trying to go for that light. It's sort of starting to glow a little bit. I'm going for that classic edge highlighting crystal look. But I don't want it to be straight white and nothing else, but just like a slow delineation from the darkest parts of the crystals to the brightest parts. While I am not a personal fan of edge highlighting, crystals demand it. I am basically using like a robin's egg blue or a really light blue to do edge highlighting on all these blue crystals. I'm running along any edge just to make it pop, each edge pop and look like it's the tiniest, thinnest part of the crystal. And it makes it pop. It does. I don't know how else to explain it, but if you want to go for that classic crystal look, this is the way to go. It can be tedious at points, but I think at the time I can't even remember. You know what? I think I was listening to a Dungeon Minister video while I was doing this part. But put on a video or something to listen to, and it'll make the boring parts of a build go faster. Okay, now this is just something I like to do. I like to hit my builds with a dark brown wash, just to give it a dirtier, dungier look, and not quite so dry look to it. I'm just hitting anything that's not crystal with this wash, including the base itself. I don't like that dry look that you have if you don't do this step, but that's my personal choice. But this is a homemade wash. Cheap, easy, quick to make, and just slather it on the whole thing, like I said, except for the crystals. Now that the wash is dry, I'm going to get my highlight color for the dirt areas and just dry brush to bring up the edge highlightings and all the different textures, make them pop again. Because while the wash does tone it down, everything down, and make it not look quite so dry, you will lose some of those highlights which you had before. So I'm just bringing all the highlights back up. I was a little unhappy with how bold or how much of a contrast the highlighting had with the crystals themselves. So I decided to use some Tyran blue shade from Citadel on the blue crystals and some Druchii violet shade from Citadel, just to tone everything down. And basically I'm washing all the crystals in the appropriate colors, and this will tone it down and also have the effect of giving a slight shine to all the crystals, which I thought I was going to have to do anyway. But if these shades didn't actually dry with a small bit of a shine to it, I would have used some gloss Mod Podge to make the crystals shine. But now that that's all done, I'm actually going to start flocking the base. And I do my standard dark earth flock, burnt grass flock, and yellow for a highlight. And now I'm actually going to add some moss paste to the model itself, anywhere that I think it looks appropriate, or if you want to go for the roll cool, anywhere it looks cool. And this is a big nasty monster. It probably doesn't move around a lot all the time, so I'm sure if there's moisture in the air, moss is going to grow on it. So I'm putting moss on. I like using moss. Also, you can use the moss paste to hide any seams or cracks or holes or spots you just missed, which is a good thing. But this is basically your last chance to hide any mistakes, which I have done. Now here I'm just adding grass tufts anywhere I think they should be. I have some PVA there on a piece of plastic, and I'm just putting the base of the grass tufts in there and then adding it anywhere I think it looks good on the base. Also, I'm adding it to the model itself because I think if the thing doesn't move around for long enough time, grass is going to grow. So I'm even one of the things I like to do, just because I think it looks cool, is I'll actually stick grass tufts in where the moss paste is. So I'm actually doing this prior to the moss paste having a chance to dry. And now for the final step, I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of yellow flocking onto where all the moss paste went, just to give it a little bit of highlight and give it that little extra kick. Just so it's not like a big wad of green. And here they are, and this party is dead as well. I thoroughly enjoyed making these. I think they came out pretty good, and they will definitely see time on the table. Will they see together? I don't know. Put my part. Players will find out. Hey, if you watch this far, it means you watched to the end, and as always, I appreciate that. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. If you want to contact me directly, there's a link to the Discord down in the description. But there are people there. Discuss ideas, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to. Just kind of keep it PC. But I really did enjoy doing this. And these are fun, and they're definitely going to see time on the tabletop. I enjoy it. It was fun. I thought I'm pretty happy with how they turned out, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope you guys make your own. If you do, come to the Discord and show me what you do. All right. And always remember, guys, whenever you're making your terrain, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.